A slot machine on the Las Vegas Strip hits a jackpot. Bells ring. Credits flood the screen. But when surveillance reviews the spin, the result does not match the programmed outcome. The chip inside the machine has been swapped, reprogrammed, set to pay out on demand. The man who did it, a Chicago locksmith named Dennis Nikrasch, had already blended back into the crowd. He had done this dozens of times, across multiple casino properties, for years. The casino's own machine had been turned into a cash dispenser, and nobody on the floor knew it was happening. Dennis Nikrasch was born on Chicago's South Side in 1941, back when the city's streets were ruled by men who understood the value of a locked door. He learned to pick locks before he could drive. By 16, he could duplicate a key just by glancing into a keyhole. The trick wasn't magic. It was muscle memory and nerves of steel. He could feel the pins, read the grooves, and cut a match on the first try. In back alleys and boiler rooms, he built a reputation as the locksmith you called when you needed the impossible opened. No questions, no noise, no evidence left behind. Nikrasch's hands were steady, his mind methodical. He memorized the taxonomy of every lock he encountered: Yale, Schlag, Sargent, Medico. Each one had a weakness. Each one had a rhythm. He could walk into a hardware store, scan the racks, and know exactly which blank he needed for a job. Safe cracking was just another puzzle. He learned to manipulate tumblers by touch, to listen for the almost silent click that meant a bolt was sliding free. By 20, he was already on the radar of Chicago's organized crime circles. They needed someone who could get in and out without leaving a trace. He delivered again and again. In 1961, Nikrasch was arrested for burglary and attempted burglary tied to a safe job gone wrong. The sentence was 10 years in federal prison. He served 9. Inside, he didn't waste time. He studied, practiced, refined every trick he knew. The cell blocks were filled with men who talked big, but Nikrasch kept quiet and watched. He learned how to improvise tools from scraps, how to bypass locks with nothing but a tension wrench and a strip of metal. When he got out in 1970, he was sharper than before. He changed his last name to Nikrasch, taking his mother's maiden name. The old life in Chicago was over. He headed west. Las Vegas in the 1970s was a city built on secrets and steel. Casino floors glittered, but behind the scenes, everything was locked down. Nikrasch saw opportunity in every cabinet, every cash box, every machine that promised a jackpot. He wasn't just a locksmith anymore. He was a professional safecracker, one with a mind for systems, patterns, and vulnerabilities. The weight of a key ring in his pocket felt like power. The click of an open lock was a promise. He understood access better than anyone in the room. The question wasn't whether he could get in. It was how far he would go once he did. But what happens when someone with that kind of access decides to rewrite the rules, not just pick the lock, but change the combination entirely? A legal slot machine, stripped down to its bones, sat on Dennis Nikrasch's workbench. The casing was cold steel, but the real prize was buried deep inside, a microchip no bigger than a postage stamp. He didn't just want access, he wanted control. Nikrasch bought the machine under his real name, no aliases, no shell companies. He wanted to study the enemy up close, to feel the resistance of every screw, the snap of every connector. Hours turned into weeks. He mapped every circuit, traced every wire, and cataloged every chip. The microchip he cared about was called an EPROM. That is where the secrets lived. EPROM chips store the payout tables and the so-called random number generator, the code that tells the reels when to stop and how much to pay. But Nikrasch saw through the myth of randomness. The seed wasn't random, it was deterministic, loaded from memory every time the machine powered up. If you knew the seed, you could predict the outcome. If you rewrote the code, you could force it. He built a clone of the casino's own chip programmer. He dumped the firmware, line by line, into his own computer. He found the payout logic. He found the trigger routine. Then he rewrote it. The new version was simple. A secret button sequence, a pattern only he and his crew knew, would override the normal payout logic. Enter the code, and the machine would spit out a jackpot on command. No need to wait for luck. The hack didn't just change the odds. It rewrote the rules. The sound of a slot machine paying out on demand is different. It's sharp, mechanical. The coins hit the tray in a steady rush, like rain on a tin roof. But the real sound was silence. The silence of a casino floor being robbed in plain sight, while nobody noticed. Nikrasch didn't just test the hack in theory. He ran it on the bench. He timed the swap. Cabinet open, chip out, new chip in, cabinet closed. Less than 60 seconds. No soldering, no permanent marks. The chip felt light in his palm, but it weighed a fortune. He could carry 5 or 6 in his pocket, each one loaded with a different payout routine, each one a skeleton key for a different casino. He practiced until he could do it blindfolded. The trick wasn't just technical, it was psychological. The casino floor is chaos, bells, lights, crowds, security everywhere. But inside the cabinet, it's quiet. The only thing that mattered was speed. Nikrasch knew that if he hesitated, if he fumbled for even a second, the whole operation could collapse. He never did. The real question was never if the hack would work. It was how long he could keep getting away with it. How many machines could he reprogram before someone noticed that the house wasn't winning anymore? The operation never ran on one man's nerves alone. Dennis Nikrasch built his crew like a watchmaker assembles gears, each piece exact, every movement hidden. At the core sat an electronics specialist, a quiet man with steady hands and a head full of circuit diagrams. He handled the chip writer, a briefcase-sized device with a row of blinking LEDs and a keyboard that looked like it belonged in a Cold War bunker. The workflow was brutal in its simplicity. Nikrasch's code, the specialist's steady fingers, a stack of blank chips ready to become jackpots on command. Eugene Bulgarino managed logistics. He didn't touch the machines. He moved people, cash, and hardware. Bulgarino secured casino floor access, arranged for lookouts, and paid off the right janitors to ignore a cabinet door left ajar. His phone never stopped ringing. Every time a chip swap succeeded, he made sure the next target was ready and the last machine was wiped clean. Spotters drifted through the casino crowd. They blended in, old ladies with plastic cups, young men with sunglasses, a couple arguing over quarters. Their job was to watch for security sweeps, memorize guard patterns, and signal when the floor was soft. A cough, a tilt of a drink, a tap on the armrest. The language of thieves is silent. Nikrasch ran rehearsals in rented garages off the strip. Stopwatch in hand, he timed the chip swap, opened the cabinet, popped the tray, swapped the EPROM, close up. 47 seconds flat. The electronics man could do it blind. The spotters practiced their signals. Bulgarino rehearsed his exit routes. No one trusted anyone else. Every job was a test of loyalty, and every payout was a reason to wonder who might turn. The crew operated like a machine, but every machine has a flaw. Who would crack first? Who would carry secrets out of the garage and into the hands of the law? The silence after a jackpot was always loudest when the crew waited to see who might talk. Las Vegas never ran out of slot machines. By the mid-1990s, the Strip alone held more than 60,000 slot machines, each one flashing and spinning, each one a potential target. Dennis Nikrasch didn't settle for one casino or one brand. He moved from property to property, MGM, Caesars, the Stardust, sometimes hitting a dozen venues in a single week. The crew worked in silence, swapping chips in clusters of machines, then vanishing before security could blink. The weight of a reprogrammed microchip in a jacket pocket meant instant money, anywhere, anytime. The scale was staggering. Some nights, 3 or 4 machines in the same casino would hit jackpots within minutes of each other. In the back offices, auditors stared at payout logs, watching numbers spike with no warning. A machine that was supposed to pay out $10,000 in a month would dump triple that in a single shift. The logs showed red flags, payouts that made no sense, clusters of winners on machines that hadn't seen a jackpot in years. But the patterns were hidden in a flood of data, buried under thousands of routine transactions. Casino staff ran their own checks. They opened cabinets, counted coins, ran diagnostics. Everything looked normal. The chips were clean, the seals unbroken. Surveillance tapes showed nothing unusual, just players, lights, and the endless churn of quarters. No one caught the moment when a chip changed hands, or the second, a machine's software turned rogue. By the time the numbers reached the accountants, the money was gone. Nikrasch's crew moved faster than the paperwork. The only trace was a growing sense of unease among the audit teams. How many machines had been hit? How many casinos were bleeding cash without knowing it? The silence of the security office was thicker than ever. Somewhere on the Strip, another jackpot was about to hit. Who would notice this time? Every casino on the Strip bragged about its eyes in the sky. Hundreds of cameras, operators glued to a wall of screens, but the eyes were pointed the wrong way. Surveillance watched faces, hands, and betting slips. Nobody cared about what happened inside a slot machine's cabinet. That was the dead zone. Security staff worked off habit. Their job was to spot cheats at the player's side, palming coins, short-circuiting bill acceptors, running fake tickets. Operators followed the action on the floor, not the shadows under the machines. The camera angles swept the crowd, the aisles, the glimmer of coins spilling out. But the moment a cabinet door opened, all you saw was a technician's back. The lens caught nothing but a shoulder, a shadow, maybe a flash of a hand. The interior, where the real crime happened, was invisible. Casino protocols trusted anyone in a maintenance uniform. If a worker crouched down and popped open a machine, surveillance assumed it was a routine fix. No one zoomed in. No one logged the serial numbers on the chips. The only record was a time-stamped blur. In the audit logs, the payout spikes looked like luck. On camera, the jackpot was just another win. The system was built to watch people, not machines. Dennis Nikrasch knew the blind spots better than anyone. He could slip a new chip into the motherboard in less than a minute. The cameras never caught the swap, never caught the trigger sequence, never caught the moment the machine turned traitor. 60,000 slot machines. One camera for every 8 to 10 machines. Most of the time, nobody was watching the right machine at all. The silence in the security office was thick. The only clue was missing money. The question that haunted every surveillance operator was simple. How many jackpots slipped through while they watched the wrong screen? In 1986, the game stopped cold for Dennis Nikrasch. Federal agents closed in with a grand jury indictment, racketeering, conspiracy, theft of casino property. The courtroom was silent except for the judge reading the numbers. $10 million in rigged slot payouts. Years of casinos bled dry by machines that should have been safe. Nikrasch stood in shackles, hands that had once picked locks now cuffed tight. The plea was guilty. The sentence was 5 years in federal prison. The Bureau of Prisons stamped his number 020-124-76 and sent him away. For a moment, Las Vegas could breathe. The man who turned slot machines into vaults was locked up, his secrets boxed away behind concrete and steel. Auditors closed their files. Casino bosses toasted the end of a nightmare. But the silence in those cells had a weight of its own. Nikrasch had time to think, time to plan. The question on every casino floor was this: was the story really over, or was the next jackpot already waiting in the dark? Dennis Nikrasch didn't vanish. He watched the strip change. Mechanical reels gave way to blinking screens and silicon chips. The old tricks died fast, but Nikrasch adapted faster. He got his hands on a decommissioned slot, legal purchase, real serial number, no questions. In a rented room, he cracked open the new machine. The guts were different, no gears, just a microprocessor, a maze of wires, a chip that carried the soul of the game. Nikrasch mapped it, line by line. He found the weak spot, the EPROM. That's where the odds lived. He built a portable chip writer, smaller than a lunchbox, heavy as a brick. Chips could be erased, rewritten, and slipped back into place in under a minute. From 1996 to 1998, Nikrasch and his new crew hit the casinos again. The take was $6 million, siphoned out of machines that never saw it coming. The crew was leaner, the tech sharper, the risks higher. Every jackpot sounded like thunder in his ears. Every chip swap felt like holding a loaded gun, but trust was thin. Paranoia crept in. Someone on the inside started talking. Who would betray whom? And how close was the law this time? June 1998. The raid came fast. Federal agents swept through a Las Vegas hotel room, catching Dennis Nikrasch and his crew before they could vanish with another stack of rigged chips. The man who had once cracked safes in Chicago now stood cuffed beside his own creation, a slot machine gutted for secrets. The trigger was betrayal. A team member flipped, trading silence for immunity. The jackpot was not just money, it was trust, and it was gone. Nikrasch faced an 8-year federal sentence, his second conviction for the same crime. By the end, the total haul reached $16 million, stolen in plain sight from the world's most watched casinos. But the real price came later. The Nevada Gaming Control Board forced the industry to tear itself apart. Manufacturers spent more than $40 million redesigning every slot machine on the strip. Encrypted chips, tamper alarms, audit scanners. The fix cost more than the theft. Casino floors became fortresses, but the shadow of Nikrasch lingered. Investigators never pinned down the source of the counterfeit chips. The informant pointed to a jeweler in the Midwest, but the trail went cold. No charges, no answers. Nikrasch died in 2008, taking the last secrets with him. The question still hangs in the air. Who else held the keys, and how many machines are still waiting to be found? Las Vegas rewired its cameras. Security hardened. Still, every year, new code slips past the sensors, just quieter, just faster. Dennis Nikrasch walked the casino floor as a locksmith, a safe cracker, a ghost in the circuitry. The lesson stays sharp. No system is truly secure when the human mind is locked on the inside. The game keeps changing, and someone always thinks they're holding the master key.